Solving quadratic functions by using the quadratic formula. So this is the quadratic formula. It is provided to you on your formula sheet that you will have while taking the milestone. So this is not something that you have to memorize. So I provided just a few simple steps that will help you to navigate using the formula. So the first thing that you would like to do is to make sure that the equation is in standard form. So you may have to solve it, rearrange some things to make sure that it looks like ax squared plus bx plus c. Then you're going to identify your a, b, and c. Then you're going to substitute those values into the quadratic formula. And then finally, you're going to just simplify. By simplify, I mean you're going to solve, okay? So let's go ahead and move into our first example. So we're going to solve this quadratic using the quadratic formula. So there is no need for us to solve this. It's already in standard form. So we're going to move on to step 2, which is to identify our a, b, and c. So looking here, the coefficient here is 1. So a equals 1. The coefficient here is 1 as well. B equals 1. And this constant is -6. So c equals -6. So now that we've identified our a, b, and c, we're going to substitute those values into the quadratic formula. So I would suggest whenever doing your practice or a test, anything like that, to prevent making a lot of mistakes, I would go ahead and write the quadratic formula at the top of my paper. That way I can easily reference it without having to look all over the place, okay? So the quadratic formula, I'll write it here, is -b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac divided by 2a. Now, I only have this memorized because I've just done so many problems. And you may end up memorizing it as well, but again, it's not a requirement. So now we're going to plug these values into this formula. Take your time, don't make any mistakes. So I'm going to bring down my negative. My b value is 1. Whenever I substitute, I always put my values in parentheses. Again, my b is 1. A is 1. C is -6. And that's all going to be over 2 and 1. Okay, so let's pause here. So you have to make sure that you put it in correctly. If not, there's just no point in proceeding because the whole thing is going to be wrong. Okay, so now we want to move through and actually just simplify. Okay, so x equals negative times 1 is -1. Simple, right? Plus or minus 1 squared is 1. Okay, so now we have -4 times 1 times -6. And when we put all of that together, we get a positive 24 all over 2 because 2 times 1 is 2. I got a little carried away with my radical. Erase a little bit of that. Okay, so now we can continue to simplify by combining our like terms within our radical. So x equals -1 plus or minus the square root of 1 plus 24 is 25 all over 2. All right, now I can go ahead and simplify this radical because that is a perfect square. So that's going to be x equals -1 plus or minus 5 all over 2. Now, do we see we have this plus or minus thing going on right here? Well, this means that we actually have 2 different values. Okay, so I'm going to actually split that up. So we have x equals -1 minus 5 over 2. And we also have x equals -1 plus 5 over 2. So we have our 2 different values here. Let's continue to simplify with this first value. -1 minus 5 is -6 over 2. And -6 divided by 2 is -3. So our first x value is -3. And now over here, -1 plus 5 is 4 over 2. And 4 divided by 2 is 2. So here are our 2x values. So the quadratic formula is not difficult. It's just very important that you pay attention to what you're doing and take your time. All right, so now you guys try this problem on your own. Pause the video to work through it and press play when you're ready to see the answer. All right, so this is what you should have gotten for this problem. You should have gotten -4 and 2 as your answers. So you can pause the video and take a look through my work and see if you made a mistake, find out where, if you need to. But I'm going to go ahead and keep moving. So again, pause the video if you need to look at this further. All right, let's take a look at example 2. So now when I look at example 2, step 1 is going to need to be utilized because we see that we don't have it in true standard form, right? So in order to solve this, we need to get this -24 over here, right? And in order to do that, we're going to add 24 on both sides. So that leaves us with -4b squared minus 10b plus 24. Okay, we set that equal to 0. Now we can go ahead and identify our A, B, and C. So A is -4, B is -10, and C is 24. So now we're going to continue through just like we did the last 2 examples. So the only thing that was different was what we ended up doing at the beginning with solving by adding the 24. So x equals -b, which is -10. Okay, so there's the negative in the formula, and here is the b value, which is -10, plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4. A is -4, C is 24, all over 2 times A, which is -4. All right, now let's keep moving and simplify this. -1 times -10 is +10, plus or minus -10 squared is 100. All right, and then we have -4 times -4 times 24, and that gives us +384. And 2 times -4 is -8. Now we can continue to simplify by combining our like terms within our radical, and that is 484 all over -8. And now this is actually a perfect square as well. So put that in your calculator and let's see what the square root of 484 is. And it is 22. So now we know we can split this up into our 2 values. So we have x equals 10 minus 22 over -8. And we have x equals 10 plus, oh, I don't know where that came from, I'm sorry, plus 22 over -8. Okay? So when we have our 10 minus 22, we're left with -12 over -8. And when we simplify that, we're left with 3 over 2. And when we do 10 plus 22, we're left with 32 over -8. And when we simplify that, we're left with -4. So our 2 values are 3 over 2 and -4. All right, now you guys are going to try the next one on your own. Remember, you'll have to solve it by adding that 104 on both sides. So pause the video, only press play when you're ready to see the final answer. All right, so for this one, your answer should have been 4 and -13 over 3. All right, and let's move on to our final example, example 3. So these last 2 examples are going to give you irrational answers. So I really wanted to give you an example that looked like this so you wouldn't freak out when you saw one that looked like it within your practice. So let's go ahead and identify our A, B, and C because it's already solved. A is 12, B is -4, and C is -23. All right, so let's go ahead and plug our values in. So we have -4 plus or minus squared minus 4ac divided by 2a. Okay, let's simplify. -1 times -4 is +4. -4 squared is 16. And -4 times 12 times -23 is +1104. All over 24, because 2 times 12 is 24. Now let's simplify our radical. 16 plus 1104 is 1120, all over 24. Now, when we take a look here, this is not a perfect square, so it's not going to come out to just a nice integer for us, okay? So we're going to have to simplify this radical, and hopefully we somewhat remember how to do this from our first unit that we did. So I'm going to take it 1120, and that can break up into 10 times 112. 10 can break up into 2 and 5. Hopefully y'all remembering how to do this, right? So this would be 2 and 56. This would be 2 and 28. 7 and 4, and then 2 and 2. Now remember, you got to find your pairs. So I see 2 2s here. I see 2 2s here. All right, so 2 times 2 is 4. Square root, what we have left over is 2, 5, and 7. So 2 times 5 times 7 is 70. So we're going to replace this 11 square root 1120 with this 4 square root 70. Okay, and I'll put that right here. So x equals 4 plus or minus 4 square root 70 all over 24. All right, now when we look at this, this can actually be simplified. So when it comes to simplifying here, think about each of these as like different terms, which they are. Okay, so what can we divide all of these by? We can divide each of them by 4. So I can divide that by 4. I can divide this by 4. I can divide this by 4. And what that leaves me with is 4 divided by 4 is 1. Plus or minus 4 divided by 4 is 1. So that's just square root of 70, because we're not going to write 1 square root of 70. And then 24 divided by 4 is 6. So this cannot be simplified any further. So we're just going to break it up so we see our two answers. 1 minus square root of 70 over 6. And 1 plus square root 70 over 6. And that is our final answer. So you will have some answers that look like this. They don't come out to a nice, simple number. It will look like this mess right here, but this is the correct answer. So now go ahead and move on to the you tried number 3 and press play when you're ready to see what you should have gotten. All right, so this is what you should have gotten for this problem. So you should have worked through it the exact same way that we did the last one, except you did have to solve the equation first. Okay. Once you got down to here, we saw that this 185 could not be simplified because here we have 2 prime numbers. Okay. So we just had to simply leave it as square root 185. And so here are our 2 answers. All right, so now it's time for you guys to work on your practice. Feel free to work individually or within a small group or just a partner. Good luck.